Christopher Paul Curtis. Mr. Chancellor, members of the Chancellor's Party, my faculty colleagues, family and friends of Mr. Curtis, ladies and gentlemen, and most importantly, graduates. It was one of those super-duper cold Saturdays, one of those days that when you breathed out, your breath kind of hung frozen in the air like a hunk of smoke. And if you could walk along and look exactly like a train blowing out big, fat, white puffs of smoke. It was so cold that if you were stupid enough to go outside, your eyes would automatically blink 1,000 times all by themselves, probably so that the juice inside of them wouldn't freeze up. It was so cold that if you spit, the slob would become an ice cube before it hit the ground. It was about a zillion degrees below zero. I first read these words in the late 90s, and they introduced to me the world of Kenneth Bernard Watson, Kenny, a character created by Christopher in his award-winning first book, The Watsons Go to Birmingham, 1963. I was immediately captivated and have been a Curtis fan ever since, and now the owner of 3 autographed books. I am so proud that he lives with us in Windsor. His first book, The Watsons Go to Birmingham, 1963, won the Newbery Honor and the Coretta Scott King Honor Book Citations. For Bud, Not Buddy, he won the Newbery Medal and the Coretta Scott King Award. For his most recent book, Elijah of Buxton, which was 3 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list, he won a Newbery Honor Book Award, a Coretta Scott King Award, a Scott Odell Award for Historical Fiction, the Canadian Library Association Book of the Year Award, and recognition as a finalist for a Governor General's Literary Award. In 2008, he became only the second winner of the Alistair MacLeod Award for Literary Achievement. This award, graduates, is named after our very own Professor Emeritus and internationally famous Windsor author, Alistair MacLeod. Christopher's books have collectively won over 35 different distinctions and recognitions. He was born in Flint, Michigan, the setting of many of his books. He was a great reader as a youth, but in his own words, he said, "I couldn't find books that were about me." After high school, Curtis spent 13 years on the assembly line of Flint's historic Fisher body plant, hanging 80-pound car doors on Buicks. He says this left him with an aversion to getting in and out of big cars, especially Buicks. He attended college at night and wrote during his breaks to escape the noise of the factory. He graduated from the Flint branch of the University of Michigan, where he earned an Avery Hopwood Prize for a draft of his first novel. He completed that book in longhand in the children's room of the Windsor Public Library. In fact, he can still be found in the library as he likes to write in open and sometimes noisy spaces. A typical day sees him up at 5 a.m., writing until about 11 a.m., some basketball over lunch, back to writing, but I am told that he does make it back home on time to watch Judge Judy. Christopher is also a champion of children's literacy, both locally and abroad. In 2001, after winning the Newbery Award, he started a school renovation project in Kenya. Mr. Chancellor, for his significant accomplishments as an author and for his commitment to social justice, so evident in his books and his actions, I present Christopher Paul Curtis for the degree Doctor of Laws, honoris causa.
Fantastic. By virtue of the authority vested in me by the laws of the Province of Ontario, and in accordance with the recommendation of the Senate of the University of Windsor, I confer upon you the degree of Doctor of Laws, honoris causa, with all the rights, privileges, and honors here and elsewhere thereto appertaining. Congratulations, Doctor. Thank you so much. Well done, Richard. I would now like to ask Dr. Christopher Paul Curtis to address convocation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. There are several reasons I'm deeply pleased and grateful to be receiving this honor. One of the reasons, and I'm not quite sure what the protocol is on this, but I firmly believe that from now on, each and every one of you must call me Dr. Curtis. And I'm letting you know right here and right now, if you don't, you won't be getting an answer. On a personal note, I have to talk to my daughter, Sydney. Sydney and I, since she was a little girl, have had this thing where when I'd call home, I'd say, "Hi, darling daughter," and her answer was supposed to be, "Hello, delightful daddy." After many, many years and tears, she finally does it. Sydney, the rules have changed. From now on, it's "Hello, Dr. Delightful Daddy." There's a great deal of confusion attached to my name, Christopher Paul Curtis. And when I go to a speaking engagement, a lot of people who introduce me ask me beforehand if I prefer being called Chris, Christopher, or Christopher Paul. Up to this point, my standard answer has been, I prefer being called Sir Christopher. So I'm happy that from now on, when I'm asked what I prefer being called, I can say I prefer being called Dr. Curtis. And my pomposity and arrogance will at least be rooted a little bit in reality. In other words, I won't necessarily sound like such a big idiot as I did before. So thank you very much. Another reason I'm so pleased is that this is, in a way, a form of graduation for all of us here, myself included. And graduations have been few and far between for me. I grew up in a time when a graduating ceremony was something special, where a student had 2, maybe 3 graduations in your lifetime if you were lucky. You would graduate from high school, then maybe from a community college, and finally from university. Things are different now. I can remember my surprise when my son had a huge graduating ceremony when he and his classmates left grade 8 for grade 9. It was big and way over the top. There were limousines and $500 evening gowns involved. Last week, I even received an invitation from a friend in Dallas to her daughter's graduation from, and I am a fiction writer, but this is the truth, she was graduating from kindergarten to grade 1. I've already sent a note saying, Dr. Curtis regrets he will not be attending. In my own life, as I said, graduation ceremonies have been rarer and more important, and this one takes the cake. In fact, my other university degree from the University of Michigan, Flint, took me 29 years to earn. Let me explain. I was going to school nights and working in the factory during the day. At that time at the University of Michigan, Flint, if you were to get a degree in political science, you needed 3 foreign language credits. I took 2 years of French right off the bat, did very well, kind of lollygagged around, didn't take the 3rd year until like 10 years after. I'd forgotten everything I learned about French. Couldn't pass it. Got all my other credits together, still was 4 hours short of graduating. And I was at a convention speaking one time, and there was a chancellor for the University of Michigan in the audience. Someone asked me, what university did you graduate from? I said, I'm 4 hours short from graduating from the University of Michigan. The chancellor went and checked, because this sounds like a lie. Who would be 4 hours short from graduating and not do something? She saw it was the truth. She came back to me and she made a deal where if I'd be the commencement speaker that spring, she would let me get credit by exam for the last 4 hours. I said, that's a kind offer, but I still don't know French. She told me, no, the exam will be on Bud Not Buddy, and I wrote that book, so I passed with flying colors. But the primary reason I'm so honored to be receiving this degree is that it's at the education commencement, and I have such a fondness and love and respect for teachers. Yours is such a difficult and important job. I speak to many dozens of classrooms a year, and I can't tell you how many times I've gotten up in front of a group of students and said to myself, thank God I'm only here for an hour. Teachers don't have that luxury, and I respect that they hang in there each and every day. This respect is something that's grown over the years. I can't really think of any other profession in society that is so important, so valuable, and yet so underappreciated. You really will have the future in your hands, and you need to keep that in mind.